administration inexplicably decided to cancel this year's event and has yet to provide a meaningful response. Therefore, today we are continuing on as planned and are proud to bring you the Not Edward Said Endowed Lecture Series for 2025. The Edward Said Endowed Lecture Series was established with a gift of $200,000 by local philanthropist and retired business owner Mustafa Milbis. He and his wife, Beatrice, donated the gift to provide support for an annual lecture series on the contemporary Palestinian experience, allowing CSUSB to continue its commitment to promoting cultural understanding into tomorrow's leaders. The lectures feature internationally recognized intellectuals who contribute to a deeper understanding of Palestinian history and culture over the past century. The lecture series is housed in CSUSB's College of Social and Behavioral Sciences and at the Center for the Study of Arab and Muslim Worlds. It should be Muslim and Arab Worlds, but the blurb is written wrong. See SMA. The series was named in honor of Dr. Edward Said, who was a professor of English and comparative literature at Columbia University and the author of more than 20 books. A leading literary critic, public intellectual, and passionate advocate for the Palestinian cause, Edward Said was born in Jerusalem in 1935 and died in New York in 2003. Mustafa Milbis serves on the CSUSB Philanthropic Foundation Board and also serves on the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences Development Council. His dedication to CSUSB is recognized by his selfless collaboration and unyielding determination. All of these qualities exhibit Milbis as a helpful community member whose willpower adds to CSUSB's commitment to students. His donation is a promise characterizing the CSUSB community as a place where we are dedicated to helping students achieve success. So deep thanks to Mr. Milbis for his provision of the funds required to keep CSMA going since our administration has cut off all of our funding in the last few years. Now, just a little bit about the Center for the Study of Muslim and Arab Worlds. The Center, CSMA, is dedicated to broadening and decolonizing knowledge of Muslim, Islamicate, and Arab worlds through teaching, research, and community outreach. The center is dedicated also to be inclusive of the study of all ethnic, religious, and cultural populations in what has been historically known as the Islamic or Islamicate and Arab worlds. The center serves as a flagship for international dialogue and academic excellence for students and faculty, as well as the local and international communities. The center supports research, lectureships, curriculum development, and community outreach. In terms of lectureships, and that is on the agenda for today. Again, we are so happy and proud and grateful to have Dr. Hatem Bayzian here to speak to us today. Oops, that didn't go very well here. Let me get back to your opening slide here. Okay. And just a little bit about Dr. Bayzian. Dr. Hatem Bayzian is a decolonial scholar who centers Islam's epistemology in all his work and examines the contemporary world through a global South lens. Bayzian is the author of 5 books. The latest is Erasing the Human. Numerous chapters, peer-reviewed journal articles, hundreds of press articles, and constant academic contributions and engagement across the globe. He is the leading scholar in the Islamophobia Studies field, having founded the Islamophobia Studies Center, editor-in-chief of the Islamophobia Studies Journal, and co-founder and current president of the International Islamophobia Studies and Research Association. Dr. Bayzian is the current president of the Menara Muslim College of New Jersey and co-founded Zaytuna College, the first accredited Muslim liberal arts college in the United States. Dr. Bayzian is a senior lecturer in the Department of Middle East Languages and Cultures and Asian Diaspora Studies at the University of California, Berkeley. Between 2002 and 2007, Bayzian also served as an adjunct law professor at Bolt Hall School of Law at the University of California, Berkeley. In addition to Berkeley, Professor Bayzian served as visiting professor in religious studies at St. Mary's College of California and advisor to the Religion, Politics, and Globalization Center at UC Berkeley. At the national level, Dr. Bayzian is the president of the Northern California Islamic Council, co-founder and national chair of American Muslims for Palestine, founder and president of Palestine Center for Public Policy, and chairman of the board of the Muslim Legal Fund for America. So again, we're deeply grateful and thankful to have Dr. Bayzian here to speak to us today. My colleague, Dr. Ahlam Mutaseb, is going to deliver the land and labor statement, and then we are going to be honored to hear from Dr. Bayzian. So I'll pass the mic.
I'll just make this my OCD. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. And thank you, Dr. Yagobian, for the introduction, and Dr. Bazian for being our guest of honor today. And I would like actually to thank the Students for Justice in Palestine for all the invisible labor they have been contributing with. And I know one of them at least is on their way to bring us actually the drinks that we promised and the the snacks. But I want to give a round of applause for SJP, please. I will start with the land acknowledgement. We recognize that California State University San Bernardino sits on the unceded, colonized territory and ancestral land of the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, Yuhavitam. We recognize that every member of the California State University San Bernardino community has benefited and continue to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1965. Consistent with our values and community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold California State University San Bernardino more accountable to the needs of American Indian and indigenous peoples. Coming back from Cal Poly Humboldt, and I attended one of their indigenous lectures, I say I add to this land back. And now to the labor acknowledgement. We recognize and acknowledge that the labor upon which our country, state, and institution are built. We remember that our country was built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped and brought to the US from the African continent, and recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We also acknowledge all immigrant and indigenous labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples who contributed to the building of the country and continue to serve within our labor force. We recognize that our country is continuously defined, supported, and built upon the oppressed communities and peoples. We acknowledge labor inequities and the shared responsibility for combating oppressive systems in our daily work. With that acknowledgement, I would like to invite Dr. Hatem Bazian to the podium, and let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. First, let me thank both David and Ahlam. David is a colleague. We were together at the same time at UC Berkeley. He was doing his PhD in history, and I was doing my work in Near Eastern Studies, and we shared the same supervisor, Professor Hamid Algar. So it's always a pleasure to be back here and to see David, and also Ahlam. We cooperated on a number of projects and continue to do so. The field of Palestine studies is a small field, it's a small family, and increasingly this field is developing and expanding. I'd like to thank also the Center for Muslim and Arab Studies that is being formed in here, which is a phenomenon across the country, as well as the SJP Students for Justice in Palestine, who have been facing one of the most draconian assault, both in here and across the country. And if just down the street in UCLA, is still something that we need to be watchful and as it's unfold. So my talk today is Neo-Orientalism, Empire's Embedded Practitioners, and the Censorship of the Gaza Genocide. Now, defining the terms, defining Orientalism, for those who are familiar with Edward Said's concept, it's a Western style of dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. And precisely, Orientalism is a matter of regularized or Orientalized writing, vision, and study, dominated by imperatives, perspectives, and ideological biases, ostensibly suited to the Orient. Is the image of the Orient expressed as an entire system of thought and scholarship and media productions. You don't need to take this just as on an abstract. The fact that news outlets continue to say that Palestinians put civilians as a human shield to justify the bombing of hospitals, refugee camps, schools, and no one actually challenged this basic assumption is Orientalist writ large that we are witnessing in front of our eyes. So that's, if you think about how it's these biases, these perspective and imperatives lead immediately to the policies that leads to the genocide. The Orient signifies a system of representation framed by the political forces that brought the Orient into Western learning, Western consciousness, and Western empire. The Orient exists for the West and is constructed by and in relations to the West is the mirror image of what's inferior and alien, the other, to the West. And Edward Said, when he wrote his work, he began this construction of Orientalism with the French Napoleon campaign on Egypt, and then taken it all the way up to the post-1979 Iranian Revolution. So his work was to really look at how the West represented the Orient, initially in relations to the Arab and Muslim world, but later others taken the work of Edward Said to apply to other regions. So you have a set made Orientalist frames for Latin America, for Africa, for parts of Asia. For example, you cannot write an article about Latin America without dropping the drug cartel in the story. Even it has nothing to do with the drug cartel. If you're literally covering the World Cup in Brazil, you have to drop the story about the drug cartel, which seems to be that everybody from Mexico to the tip of Chile, Brazil, and Argentina, you get up in the morning and you say, which cartel should I join? Right? This is a part of Orientalism that functions and works relative to parts of the Western Hemisphere and constantly also dispensing with the Monroe Doctrine. Edward Said spoke about latent Orientalism, which is the unconscious, untouchable certainty about the Orient. Right? And Edward Said based some of his work on Freud's psychoanalysis on the subconscious, which is also the work of W.D. Du Bois that looks at the soul of black folks. So Edward Said extended the ideas of Freud and W.D. Du Bois to look at the latent Orientalism, this that is in our subconscious. Our behavior, our attitude, our perspective is really shaped by what we have in our subconscious. How is this subconscious is formed? Part of it is in early childhood development and family. Part of it is the consumption of media material that we consume, which tends to reinforce these negative attitudes and perspectives. For example, by the age of 6 years old, as a child, you already almost witnessed or saw 4,000 minutes of murder, even as you're watching cartoons, because cartoons is literally reinforces violence. So in the same way, these attitudes and perspective relative to the Orient have been seeped into our cultural productions, into movies, into cartoons, into literature and so on, that begins to form our subconscious. Manifest Orientalism is what is spoken and acted upon. It includes information and changes in knowledge about the Orient, as well as policy decisions founded in Orientalist thinking. Bernard Lewis said, don't pay attention to the Arab street, right? They're irrational. That's a statement, an Orientalist statement, which means that a 300 million population, as well as 2 billion Muslim population that says we oppose U.S. foreign policy with the 90th percentile, meaning don't pay attention to it because literally they're irrational, meaning they don't have the mental capacity to understand when somebody slaps you, it's a sign that you actually need to respond to. So again, this is where manifest Orientalism based on the existing latent Orientalism informs decisions and people begin to act upon it. Now, transition to Neo-Orientalism, update of colonial logics post 1979 9 Iranian Revolution, which is a watershed moment in relations to Orientalist thinking, 9/11 and beyond, which focused on terrorism and Muslim violence. U.S. scholars and media figures shaped imperial discourse that justifies interventionism and censored Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian voices, especially today around Gaza. Right? So this is again, Neo-Orientalism begins about terrorism and Muslim violence. I began to actually say what we have. Anybody here watched the movie Monsters Incorporated? All right. Today we have Muslim Incorporated, where every news person, every newscast, every politician, everyone stands up and tells you about the Muslims. The more threatening, fearful, the more longer beard, the thicker the accent, right? The more that you could say Hamas or Hummus, the more that you actually get the response negatively, because we have shaped this Muslim Incorporated as a driver for fear in order to justify militarism, continued policy expansion, interventions, which often is related to natural resources. I hope we understand that the oil in the Middle East is ours. God just made a mistake, put it there. In the same way that he made a mistake about the oil in Bolivia, 305 billion, God made a mistake, it's our oil. You might say, I am laughing, you know, it's a joke, but that's how policy is actually formulated, that we need to have access to oil and natural resources, in particular oil and natural gas, which 2/3 of it exists in the region that we have massive military deployment. But you can't tell the American public that we need to go and take their oil, so we need to get Muslims Incorporated, a way to actually stoke fear, and increasingly is being deployed as a wedge issue domestically in elections, whether in here, France, England, and other places. Now, Neo-Orientalism as the modern revival of colonial era stereotype, repackaged through media, academia, and policy to justify imperial control, and positing the violent Oriental subject, framing Arab Muslim societies as inherently violent, irrational, or anti-democratic, erasing historical context, colonialism, and occupation. Actually, if we take the data on Muslim societies, actually they are much less violent than what we find in our neighborhood. You don't believe me? Again, every year in America, we have 48,000 people die from gun violence. We have more mass shootings in this country than the days of the year. The most dangerous space in America is actually in school, K through 12. So much so, it was safer for an American military person to be deployed on the front line in Iraq or in Afghanistan than actually being around schools in America. Yet, when some of our students wants to study abroad, and I get the call, and maybe Al-Hlam and they will call, somebody wants to go and study in Morocco or Jordan, and you get the family calling the professor. Is it safe? Can I trust that my daughter or son will be safe in Morocco, because I hear the news that, you know, they eat people for lunch and they have 3 eyes, right? I tell them it's much safer in Morocco and Jordan than actually being down the street around high school in any given city or town in the United States. For one reason is you don't have the type of mass shooting that occurs almost on a regular basis, right? But Neo-Orientalism have made it possible for us to make this fear as a result of this core traits that are assigned to them. Classic Orientalism othering the East to justify colonial rule, Neo-Orientalism post 9/11, securitization, war on terror, rhetoric, and digital dehumanization that is taking place. So that's where we are. If you're a Muslim, you always are treated as a VIP on the airport. Not in reality, you always are set aside and they give you a massage whether you want it or not. Right? Anybody here is familiar with the 4 S's? For Muslims often travel and they get the 4 S's on their boarding pass. This is like your extra special. Sometimes you walk into the airport and literally 4 officers are waiting for you at the counter and they escort you from the counter all the way to the plane. Now, luckily, in 2021, by accident, we got access to the security list by an airline that by mistake left it on their website. The randomness of a person being on this security list and being Muslim is 97.1%. Now, I know our government does not discriminate nor targets Muslims, but I wish that when I play the California Lotto, I have the same type of percentage, 97.1%, be chosen for such occurrences. Right? So this all occurs as a result of this Neo-Orientalism that gets to unfold post 9/11, and the securitization, the surveillance, which also builds into the campus surveillance of Arab, Muslim, Palestinian SDB students. You're a threatening figure, you need to understand. You're a Muslim incorporated. Whether you're a Muslim or you're part of Jewish Voice for Peace, you're a threatening because you fulfill that Neo-Orientalist paradigm. Now, Orientalism and Islam. Orientalists posit that Islam is an irrational belief, right? Violent savages at the gates of civilization. This actually was rolled into many of the ads, election ads, beginning in 2010 in the United States. But if you go to the UK, if you go to Switzerland, Germany, and so on, this notion of the Muslim immigrants in Europe are violent savages at the gates of civilization, which actually makes the refugees that are there because of colonization and post-colonization becoming guilty for arriving in Europe. So it problematizes the refugees and immigrants that everyone in the global south, in Middle East, in Syria, in Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, they're getting up in the morning and say, I need to go to Europe to replace as a part of the replacement theory. But the discourse again says violent savages, that they're oppressive, women are submissive and oppressed, and at the same time women are made into exotic objects. So this is again a set of series that are based on Orientalism and Islam. Now, Edward Said says, there's been so massive and calculatedly aggressive an attack on the contemporary societies of the Arab and Muslim for their backwardness, lack of democracy, and abrogations of women's rights, as well as corruption. Now, some of it will agree. You know, some leaders in the Arab and Muslim world are oppressive and dictators. But unfortunately, they're all our allies, and we help them stay in office. Like, you know, Hosni Mubarak stayed at his seat of power for almost 30 years. I never identified with him, but Bush, Clinton, and every president since he took office identified him and rolled $2.5 billion for him. And when the Egyptians rose up and removed Hosni Mubarak, we actually facilitated the counter-revolution by working with the military in 8 months to undo the revolution in Egypt. So the critique, while we understand the critique that is being formulated, it actually is the policy what wants to maintain the status quo in the region. The major influences on George W. Bush's Pentagon and National Security Council were men such as Bernard Lewis and Fuad Ajami, experts on the Arab and Islamic world who helped the American hawks to think about such preposterous phenomena as the Arab mind and centuries-old Islamic decline, which only American power could reverse. Today, bookstores in the US are filled with shabby screeds bearing screaming headline about Islam and terror, Islam exposed, the Arab threat, and the Muslim menace. All of them written by political polemicists, pretending to knowledge imparted to them and others by experts who have supposedly penetrated to the heart of these strange Oriental people. Accompanying such warmongering expertise have been CNN and Fox, plus myriad evangelical and right-wing radio hosts, innumerable tabloids, and even middle-brow journals, all of them recycling the same unverifiable fictions and vast generalizations so as to stir up America against the foreign devil. Right? In my own experience, I was actually on an interview, and the person that was supposed to sit across me in the interview, we had the journalist and the other person, was an expert on democratization in the Middle East. Now, this person spent 6 months in the green zone in Iraq. did not even venture to go out and order a shawarma on his own outside of the green zone. Yet he was actually being introduced as an expert on democratization in the Arab world, only spent 6 months in the US-controlled green zone during the US occupation of Iraq. If you brought anyone to speak on any type of democratization on Europe, if the person is not a specialist on the UK, France, or the Netherlands, they would not be actually sitting in seat. Orientalism makes it possible for the person to sit there and for the interviewer to actually ask the question for him and think that he is imparting on us wisdom that is coming literally, possibly he has some type of osmosis to 2,000 years or 3,000 years of history imparted to him. Every single empire in its official discourse has said that it is not like all others, that its circumstances are special, that is a mission to enlighten, civilize, bring order and democracy, and it uses force only as a last resort. And standard still, there always is a chorus of willing intellectuals to say calming words about benign or altruistic empires. This is what Saeed is saying. Now, we say that the United States, we're exceptionalists, right? We have an exceptional history. We're bringing manifest destiny back in circulation. And many intellectual circles and at universities are ready to censor as a way to come in alignment with rather than to challenge the status quo. Arabs and Muslims have been told that victimology and dwelling on the depredation of empire is only a way of evading responsibility in the present. You have failed. You have gone wrong, says the modern Orientalist. So that's again what we are experiencing, that you cannot actually critique the past or critique, not even the past. Past is just yesterday. And as such, you don't need to dwell on these and look at what we are doing at the present context in relations to empire. Simplified view of the world that a relative handful of Pentagon civilian elites have formulated for US policy in the entire Arab and Islamic worlds. A view in which terror, preemptive war, and unilateral regime change backed by the most polluted military budget in history are the main idea debated endlessly and impoverishingly by media that assigns itself the role of producing so-called experts who validated the government's general line. On our own department, you walk down the department and there is a poster for a lecture, should we bomb Iran? Now, this is in an academic department posing the question, should we bomb Iran? Without any context, right? This is pushing really imperial policy, masquerading as legitimate scholarship, right? There is no discussion on it, so it becomes whether we bomb with the 1-ton bomb or half-ton bomb, and what other agencies or countries or associations will participate. So completely Orientalist framing relative to the policy that is being pursued. Now, moving to empires embedded practitioners. Now, there are many think tanks. I often say they are tanks with not much thinking taking place, but nevertheless, that's how they describe, they continue to reproduce the same discredited Orientalist notions. American Enterprise Institute, Middle East Forum, Hudson Institute, Foundation for Defense of Democracies. All these literally are producing shoddy material, creating a pipeline to policymakers to defame, to derail, to really push Orientalist and Neo-Orientalist framing. Media, Fox News, The Washington Post, New York Times, The Atlantic, really op-eds conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism constantly, as well as pushing these Orientalist notions. You have such an op-ed in the New York Times, how to understand the Middle East through an animal farm. Right? Who would actually allow such a framing to actually be as an op-ed in the New York Times? Academia, pro-Israel lobbying groups influencing Middle Eastern studies funding, and increasingly now it's being attempting to be curtailed both from the congressional, but even before that at a campus level. Now think about it this way. The Middle East has 22 Arab countries. They always have to be balanced with one country that is our favorite, Israel. So you cannot do a program relative to the 22 countries without actually constantly having to balance with one country. Even if you want to speak not only in Palestine, but in the region as a whole, the question is that it's not balanced. Well, this notion of balance is always situated against any critique of US or Israel policies. Now, the new thing that is being promoted is point of view neutral teaching. I love this. I love it from the following. I actually want to insist that flat earth society should be able to have neutral point of view neutral teaching in the classes, whether astronomy or other places, right? Because I am, as a professor, possibly who maybe wrote 10 books on astronomy, don't have the opportunity to say to my students that the earth is not flat, because somebody might be offended that their experience of the flatness of earth, right, cannot be taught as a subject. Now, you might be, I'm being facetious, but in relations to Palestine, now I, as a professor, cannot say that is a genocide taking place. And if somebody gets offended for me saying it's a genocide, then I have to actually face the consequences by those upwardly mobile people. And therefore, that becomes a point of view neutral teaching. This was the letter that was sent to Columbia, the letter that was sent to Harvard, and 60 other colleges and universities are subject to this, which is also being included into the accreditation process. So literally, the process is to try to push a point of view that any person with qualified, right, we're talking about qualified, can assess that this is actually a genocide unfolding. 52 Holocaust scholars said that what is taking place in Gaza is a genocide, which means that as a Holocaust survivor or a Holocaust scholar, they are unable to actually speak with their expertise on the development that is occurring in relations to Gaza. The statement, Iran is the core problem in Gaza, really is a statement from the Defense of Democracies, not actually genocide. It's almost beyond you that somebody actually tried to say that Iran is the problem, and we're increasingly possibly at the opening doors of another war with Iran that is being pushed as we speak. Now, just a minute about the Clash of Civilizations book. Almost every think tank, non-thinking person have read and took the Clash of Civilization as their, I don't want to insult the Bible, as their go-to, because the biblical text comes from Palestine, and we do love Jesus. He's a Palestinian, right? So we don't want to engage. But this is a go-to book between Huntington, Clash of Civilization, The Arab Mind by Rafael Patai, Fuad Ajami. These were the go-to book for many of the think tanks, many of the policymakers, and still affects and still at the hub of how we frame the relationship to the Arab and Muslim world. In page 20, Huntington says, unless we hate what we are not, we can't love who we are. Now, I want to go get the book. You could Google it right now, page 20. Unless we hate what we are not, we can't love who we are. I say that he flipped Christianity on its head, because Jesus says, love thy enemy. So he says that this is a defense of the Judeo-Christian tradition and Western civilization. It's mind-boggling that actually some will eat this and understand that even if you don't like the Muslim world, acceptable, all right, you're not actually preaching the foundation of Christian thought, right? So we need to understand this clash of civilization that has been pushed across. The Iranian Revolution and Neo-Orientalism. The 1979 Iranian Revolution challenges U.S. regional hegemony. The rise of Bernard Lewis and Fuad Ajami as ideological architects during this period. Bernard Lewis is saying, in Islam, unlike in Christianity, there is no Caesar. This makes democracy difficult. What a stretch. What a stretch. One thinking that Caesar is actually the archetype of a democracy. And then which Christianity he's speaking about? Is he speaking about the Catholic Church? Is he speaking about the Protestant church? Is he speaking the Latin Orthodox church? So again, part of, or even Eastern church, the Coptic church, the Ethiopian church, the oldest churches are actually in the Muslim world. Right? So even his statement about Christianity, he's confusing Western Christianity with Christianity as a category in its totality, and beginning to literally make this frame, which means that the problem, you have too much Islam. Maybe we could develop a DNA test here at the university to say whether you have too much Islam or not, and whether you are actually able to be recognized with this phenomenon. Neo-Orientalist framing Iran as irrational, fanatical, apocalyptic, which then justifies every action or policy related to it or the region as a whole. So Iran becomes that site where policy tends to be articulated around to justify intervention and war. This is not a defense of Iranian particularity. Every state with its own national interests have contradictions and so on, but Iran in here serves as the monster incorporated or the Muslim incorporated fear, regionally justifying our intervention in a way to undo the Iranian revolution. The response to Iran, sanctions, coverts up, propaganda against Iran. This is actually one of the things that we don't realize, that since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the United States actually supported a group of guerrilla fighters stationed in Iraq to launch constant attack against Iran. And this continued for the longest period of time as part of this operation. Use of dissidents figures as the ideological tools, including the setting in place a number of radio stations, television stations to broadcast directly to Iran. Orientalist narrative justify regime change advocacy, obfuscate the real cause behind the policy, control of oil and natural gas in the region, right? We just cannot allow anybody to leave our control because, again, it's our oil and it's our natural gas, and we should not allow anybody to jeopardize our lifestyle, right? So again, this is part of the policy. And secondary is to make sure that we press China, because China does not have its oil or natural gas resources. So our domination of the oil and natural gas makes it possible for us to press China to continue to fund our credit card, because that's how China can continue to fund our economy. Now, jihad in Afghanistan and the birth of Al-Qaeda, US-backed Mujahideen versus USSR, Operation Cyclone, religious mobilization as a Cold War weapon. Brzezinski in 79, your cause is right and God is on your side. I didn't know that Brzezinski was talking to God. This is before iPhone, right? So today you could pick iPhone and talk to God directly, right? Should I invade? Yes, you should invade. But literally, your cause is right and God is on your side. And the United States welcomed all the Mujahideen. So if you're talking about during the period of 1979 and the Russian invasion, the CIA set up an operation to recruit Muslims from across the Muslim world, and also sought the cooperation of intelligence services in Egypt, in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Tunisia, and so on. So if you wanted to go to the jihad in Afghanistan, right, you have the US blessings and all the blessings, and God is on your side. Here's a plane ticket. You get to Pakistan, you get to Peshawar, 3 months in training, and then you go shoot on the right direction with books that were funded by the United States Agency for Aid and Development. So literally you still have those texts in there. Now I'm going to say the following. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the second in command in Al-Qaeda, was brought by the CIA to the United States to go and visit Muslim communities around the country to recruit them to go to Afghanistan, not Palestine, Afghanistan. All right, so if you wanted to go, here's the ticket, here's the infrastructure, and that was the narrative. Bloodying the face of the Russians was far more important than anything else. It's a payback because they blooded our face in Vietnam. So literally all of these people became frontline pawn in a global war, Cold War, and instrumentalized people's faith and mobilize faith in ways to be an instrument for Cold War dynamics. So from freedom fighters to future, quote, terrorists, a shift in narrative in use. Once the operation finished, then it's closed down. Many of these went back to different countries. Some were actually immediately put to jail. Some ran for election, and those elections that they won ended up being canceled, and civil wars erupted in different parts of the region. And even we talk about the Iraq invasion of Kuwait is directly connected to the war in Afghanistan, because Osama bin Laden said, I will defend Saudi Arabia. The Saudis actually said, no, you can't. Your war against the Russians was funded and supported by the CIA, so we really know whom to call. And that's why the Saudis picked up the phone and called for George Bush to send 500,000 US troops to Saudi Arabia to fight against Iraq. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, the first meeting in the US National Security Council said that Kuwait is a gas station. We don't care who owns it. That's the first comment in the national security. Then later on, they changed the narrative. Al-Qaeda and the Iraq-Kuwait war decontextualizes of history, as if people got up in one morning and basically said, oh, we need to reorient what we are doing. This is an operation that almost a 30-year in the making. And literally, it's a classic blowback operation rather than a completely decontextualized part of history. Iraq War and embedded Neo-Orientalism. The 2003 invasion justified via weapons of mass destruction myth. We remember that the New York Times allowed 8 front-page articles to be written about weapons of mass destruction. Judith Miller, who was actually one of the people on the coverage, she was given a number of these pieces. In one of the pieces, front page, just before the war, she said, and that was the evidence, that an American general standing next to her said, over there's weapons of mass destruction. Now, if she wrote it and she reported this is what said, how come the editors told her what kind of evidence is? I hope that we don't do this in this university, that you could actually put as a primary evidence on your paper that somebody told me over there, right, there is Muslim Incorporated that we need to fear. So literally, this was a front page article for the New York Times. After the war and after the disaster, the New York Times apologized, but the apology was way down in page 20, right, in a small print, say we got it wrong. What did you get wrong? It's like you're not making an omelet. It's an invasion of a country, collapsing a country, 1.5 million people dead, and 3 million out refugees, and say we got it wrong, right? So again, I get it wrong when my burrito is cold, but I don't get it wrong with such a policy. 8 different pieces, front page pieces on pushing for the war. Fuad Ajami, as embedded academic voice, the U.S. ought to have the confidence to see the Iraqi venture through. Right? Now you need to understand the concept of embedded academics and also native experts. Fuad Ajami is both an embedded and a native expert. Bernard Lewis would say people in the Arab and Muslim world are irrational and horrible. Fuad Ajami said, no, they're worse. I lived with them. I'm one from them, right? So his task is to amplify, reaffirm, and push forth this academic legitimation of occupation and American exceptionalism, right? So I hope that you're watching Iraq, because the disaster in Iraq is still unfolding. We wrote the Constitution of Iraq. And we made sure that in this writing of the Constitution, you cannot put Humpty Dumpty back again. Right? It created a constitution based on fractured political identities, rather than actually asserting and affirming a national identity that was there in Iraq, which ended up that people will be fighting one another while we continue to actually have oil contracts, because that's the only thing we protected when we invaded Iraq. Post 9/11, and securitization of Muslim subjects globally, Islam equal inherently violent in dominant discourse. Islamophobia is not simply an irrational fear or hatred of Muslims, but a structural ideology tied to the needs of empire. Right? If you don't have a threat, right, to mobilize, we don't get into the $1 trillion military budget that we're putting. I recommend for people to go back and listen, possibly read Martin Luther King speech, three evils of society: militarism, materialism, and racism. These are still with us. They did not take a break, and they did not go to a Hawaiian vacation. They've been there, they intensified, and they're more dangerous today than at any given time. Materialism, militarism, and racism. Muslims were surveilled, detained, and excluded. If you think about here in LA, the FBI have unleashed a whole bunch of informants to go and surveil, tab, and put listening devices in mosques. And you have Craig Montoya, one of the cases that in here where he had a falling out with the FBI, ended up filing a lawsuit against the FBI. So literally this is almost was one of the major areas for surveilling the Muslim subjects, which I also say same thing occurred on college campuses. Targeting of activism and academics, Palestinian and Muslim activists surveilled and deplatformed. All right? And now all of a sudden everybody is saying, save our education, defend the universities. Well, the Palestine exception is always there. When Palestinians were being, even Edward Said himself was constantly being subject to cancellation, challenge to his writing and perspective. His own office had a number of threats that they had to put a panic button on his office. Right, so this Palestinian Muslim activists surveilled in the platforms almost constantly. Since October of 2023, the number of students that have been kicked out from the university, some universities actually withheld their degrees, some actually in relations to Mahmoud Khalil. Colombia itself handed the information to the authorities about him that he gets to be arrested. A number of other individuals and their presentations were completely canceled as a result of the surveillance and the targeting of activists. Professor Joseph Mas'ad has been almost non-stop being harassed. He actually was one of the early targets during the Columbia Unbecoming, which was a number of Zionist students that targeted him, claiming that he is biased, that he is threatening, that he is anti-Semitic. After long investigation, Columbia University found nothing whatsoever to actually cause any changes in his status at the university. Professor Rabah Abdel Hadi in San Francisco has been almost non-stop since her first arrival to lead the Arab and Muslim Diaspora Studies program that was formed at the university. And literally she could have possibly written 10 books rather than writing and responding almost for non-stop legal harassment on a regular basis. So this is again anyone that is a faculty in the Arab, Palestinian, Middle Eastern space that does not toe the line or attempt to actually engage in basic research with evidence will be systematically targeted and harassed. Visa denials, this is something that it comes from the Ether Project 2025, but also from Lawfare, which pushed for targeting students who are active on Palestine. But in order for us to understand both visa denials and the targeting of green card holders or non-citizen aliens, the case that gets the Supreme Court to change the constitutional framework is the LA 8 case. So again, you should be happy, right? You're part of the LA 8, right? LA 8 case was 7 Palestinian and 1 Kenyan. They were active in this area. Now the Reagan administration in 1985, 86, 87 was having a hard time with its Central American policy, right? The Congress have voted to limit U.S. funding for death squads and policy low-intensity warfare in Latin America. So Reagan and his team decided to see if they could actually use immigration law, right, in order to target Latin American activists. So they created the Border Control Committee to see if they could reshape immigration law in that way. But they did not want to go directly to the strength of the movement at the time of Latin Americans. So they picked up on these 7 Palestinian and 1 Kenyan because, again, the support for Palestine was very low, arrested them and charged them with supporting worldwide communism. That was the charge if you read the file, the file. Their accusation is they were handing a magazine, right, which is Al-Hadaf magazine, which is the publication of the PFLP, which is, I hope you know, you can actually advocate for communism. It's constitutionally protected, right? We have a U.S. Communist Party, right? And we actually had a platform for the longest period of time. I hope that you're going to benefit from your Social Security, because Social Security was initially part of the platform of the U.S. Communist Party. So if you oppose communism, you need to let go of your Social Security. I'm just joking, but just to understand. So there is nothing illegal about standing and saying Brother Marx and Cousin Lenin, right, in your discourse. And there is nothing illegal of actually handing a magazine, right, is protected constitutionally, right? Again, it's a magazine, freedom of the press. So they were arrested. And that case continued from 1987 and ended up in 2009. When the Clinton administration came and passed the 1996 Effective Death Penalty Act, Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty, retroactively, they charged the LA8 case. Their case makes it to the Supreme Court in 1998 under Janet Reno, Attorney General, and Janet Reno versus LA8. The Supreme Court rules that non-citizen aliens, green card and foreign students, so on, do not have the constitutional protection, which was the first time that this actually changes, which means that once you enter into the U.S., historically, you are protected by the Constitution. You have all the rights and the privileges. Now, it's blood type, right, lineage would determine whether you enjoy the U.S. Constitution. So we need to understand that change in the U.S. constitutional protection was directly connected to Palestine, right? But more importantly, was directed to the Reagan administration that was able to rewire our immigration policy. And now immigration is part of national security and is managed through the Department of Homeland. That's a new change, and it's now being weaponized against anyone that speaks on the Arab, Muslim, Palestinian issues, but more so in relations to Gaza. Now, Stephen Salaita, right, he was fired for pro-Palestine tweets. That's all. All right? So when we go around the world, say we are the land of freedom and so on, we have all of the ability to speak. Stephen Salaita actually just tweeted, and that tweet actually got him to be fired, and he's no longer employed in his job. Now, I want to just give some fact from 9/11. The only from the Iraq War, the only person to have been fired from their position as a faculty post 9/11 was a Native American scholar, Ward Churchill, who was the chair of Native American department in Boulder, Colorado. Yet at UC Berkeley, we have a professor, torture professor, who wrote all the torture memos to George Bush, right, that expanded the torture regime, 24 new, including organ, what you call waterboarding, and he defined that it is torture if it leads to organ failure. Anything below that is not torture. He's still teaching in the law school as a professor that violated U.S. law, because again, torture is illegal in U.S. law, violated the Fourth Geneva Convention, violated every tenet legally understood, yet he is still teaching as a professor. So which means if you teach with the voice of empire, you're protected. If you critique empire, or if you happen to speak Palestine speak, then don't think that the protection will be extended to you. Now, USC canceling Asna Tabassum valedictorian speech over safety concerns. Safety concerns. You know that universities, the most dangerous time for the university is football games. right? I've been and know exactly what is taking place. The most dangerous time at the campus is when you have these massive football games. USC, right? You'll have, what is it, 60 or 70,000, mostly already. By the time they get to the stadium, it's already wasted, right? You know, because alcohol, and we supply them with enough marijuana, right? And those who are advanced get a lot of good cocaine, right? So literally you have a whole audience, right, that is such in a dangerous situation that now Asna Tabassum, who studied actually genocide, is a safety concern. And not only that, the university leadership, the faculty, and everybody goes along with it. And not only that, all of the press begins to parrot this utter nonsense in relations to campus safety. Now, I understand being a Palestinian, you're a danger, right? Because from latent Orientalism, you are not to be a person to actually be subject of being scared, right? You only are a scary person. I tell you this from a personal example. I got a death threat with somebody actually putting a rifle scope on my in my mailbox. Right? I call the police, campus police. You know, right. Call the police. They come, talk to me, give me their card, and they give me a pamphlet how to deal with stress. Nothing whatsoever. Last year, I get another death threat. So I also go to I have not heard back from them. Most likely, they are consulting with Netanyahu to see whether, you know, they should act or not. So literally, for the students there, I have about 2,000 Muslim Arab Palestinian students at UC Berkeley. The number of cases that they have filed of harassment, of taunting, of calling them terrorists, of calling them Hamas, of calling all kinds of names, literally stacks and stacks, not a response from the university till now. All right? On the opposite, every other type of complaint is acted upon, and literally you'll find gladiators coming to check and surveil the students. New York Police Department, Muslim surveillance, Canary Mission, the IRA definition misuse. Neutrality is a myth that serves the powerful. So this notion of neutrality, and I also very critical of the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I say diversity, equity, and exclusion when it comes to Palestine. All right? And literally what you're experiencing in here is the direct aspect of exclusion. You're telling me that an endowment from the community, and you still are not comfortable, like who called you? Right? Who actually complained about it? How is it that somebody becomes uncomfortable with a lecture? I know that I am the most dangerous professor in America. Maybe that's like they were fearful from the students, but any students here fearful from me? No? Okay? If you're fearful, you know, I'll treat you for a shawarma free. Shawarma for all is the revolution, right? So this notion of making the expression of someone a cause for censorship, which is the essence of censorship. You know, I actually happen to have organized with Mario Savio, right? The leader of the free speech movement. Like he organized for the Proposition 209. He died after Proposition 209 passed. So the university comes and says, we're going to defend free speech and we're going to go and meet in Free Speech Cafe while arresting those who are speaking, right? It's just complete contradiction. You cannot celebrate the past while censoring the present. You cannot actually speak about epistemic and an education of liberation of the mind while you're actually censoring the people to hear the voices that will challenge the status quo that we are in. You can't be concerned about grants while in order to get the grant, you have to unload the people that you think they're a problem for your grant. We just have to understand that the history of censorship is very, very long and complex, and we need to understand that a defense of education today and our society without Palestine cannot actually register an actual change. It will be the status quo, but possibly looking nicer from the outward, but inward it would be literally censorship, demonization, and exclusion by design. So I'll stop in here and we'll take some of your questions.
Okay, we got a half hour for Q&A. Is this on? It is. If people have questions, please raise your hands and I'll bring the mic. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that for students who are getting extra credit, we passed a paper around, but also if you didn't get it, I have more here you can sign if you want to get extra credit for a class. Please indicate your name, the professor's name, and the class number.
Questions? Anyone?
And I just want to say, let's give it another round of applause.
Thank you. No, I could move around.
Okay, thank you, Luke.
Hello, my name is Luke. Thank you for speaking. I was wondering, there's a lot of what you were talking about regarding in recent times, there's been a whole lot of stuff about cancel culture and all the other stuff and the Palestinian exception and things like that. So, and especially regarding in America, we have the U.S.'s two-party system, left, right, and there's like becoming more and more strict into the box of Democrat and Republican. But is there any like large-scale or even small-scale political movements right now that you think are particularly like things to keep an eye on, either in terms of it's a dangerous eruption of like suppression for like Palestinians, things like that, or even a particular supportive like things to look at and try and support? I know like I only just learned about the boycott, divestment, and
BDS.
yeah, BDS movement and stuff like that. So is there any things like that that you'd want to shout out or like to particularly to look at?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of projects taking place, especially on college campuses. The boycott campaigns are occurring. I have this. The boycott campaigns are taking place, so I encourage them. But we're increasingly are witnessing people running for office across the region. We just had yesterday, 2 days ago, I think it's Richardson in Texas. The mayor is from the local community who ran. So people are beginning to run for political office, which is creating tension, even running with the Democrats or Republicans, but running with a different type of a platform. And I think increasingly you're going to see that develop. And there are some partnerships that are taking place. There's alliances being formed, let's say, between those who are advocating for Palestine, a section of the Jewish community, especially Jewish Voice for Peace, and others, anyone below age 35. There are coalitions developing in New York, New Jersey, even in places in Texas. We're seeing it in Minnesota as well. So there are definitely an effort. The Social Democrats have been making an overture. And if you notice in this past cycle, they did not endorse some of the Democrats that did not actually come on the record in speaking about the genocide on Palestine. So Alexandria Ocasio did not, so they actually withdrew the endorsement from her. So I think there is tension taking place relative to the political process. And I do think that the 2026 election cycle will be very, very important and critical. And I think we need to push Palestine to the fore. Not because it's the only cause, but it's a cause that is connected to so many elements, whether it's militarism, materialism, the racism that we are witnessing. It's not coincidental. The complete undoing of the Civil Rights Act that is taking place in front of our eyes. The three gains of the Civil Rights Movement were the Voting Rights Act, Immigration Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, and Immigration Rights Act. And these are the three that are under assault to undo the gains and the transformation of the society from the 1960s until now. And I think we need to look at what is this landscape that we're dealing with and advocate in it in that way.
Okay, other questions? One back there, yes.
Thank you for speaking. I just wanted to say, first of all, before I ask my question, I love what you're doing. You're doing great work. The question I have, on Monday, the House tried to vote for a bill that was against anti-boycott laws for Israel.
Yeah.
The House, the bill didn't pass, but I don't think this is going to be the end of that. I believe we're going to see more legislation like this. what should we expect and what should we do with legislation coming up like this?
Yeah. Also good news yesterday, we won our case in Nevada, right? So in a federal court. So that's a positive outcome. Let me say, maybe put another hat on it. I want to thank pro-Israel organizers. I would like to thank AIPAC. I would like to thank Canary Mission. I would like to thank all of them because they are committing one of the worst strategic mistakes in front of our eyes. They have managed, I'm thanking because they now have shifted the debate from discussions about what is taking place in Beit Hanina or in the West Bank to a shift of debate on constitutional rights, on First Amendment rights, on the rights to boycott, the right to organize, and so on. And I will say it now that it is a losing battle on their part. They hitched their camel, right, which they imported, to the wrong conceptualization in the society. Every time we went to court on the right to boycott, we have won our case. Right? In Texas, they had a case where you needed, as a contractor, to sign that you will not actually boycott Israel in order to apply for a contract in Texas. So that was taken to court, and the court says it's unconstitutional. I had a lecture in Arizona State University, and they sent me a contract, item 20. I need to agree that I will commit not to speak on PDS during my visit to Arizona State University. My lecture was on PDS. So I refused to sign it, took the state to court, and I won my case in there. We won our case in Kansas. So I know that they're going to pass because, creative thought has departed, because when you are powerful, you actually resort to the only thing that you have is power. And that is actually your undoing. And I would say that I'm thanking them because they literally handed to us a defense of the US Constitution and First Amendment right. Not my favorite Congressman, Marjorie Greene, came out against the bill, right? Just to think that she actually would be aligned shows you that what is occurring in this country is literally people are beginning to recognize that there is a limit to the advocacy on what Israel advocacy looks like. And now they're trying to almost use a stealth power to muzzle people by means of a legislation. I do expect the legislation to be tried again, and it's passed. Then we challenge it in court, and it will be deemed to be unconstitutional. I know they're going to have, again, another try to HR 9495, which is to try to remove tax, nonprofit tax rights for organizations that advocate for Palestine. We expect that to be brought in, and likewise, it will be challenged in court, and I would say it will be a battle back and forth, and I would say it's in the long term, it will be a winnable cause. The same type of targeting that is occurring toward Harvard and universities, that we're going to revoke your tax exempt status. This tells you that somebody has begun to plan irrationally, right? And I would really like to talk to their PR person or what you call marketing agencies, like who actually you guys are talking to. It's like Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir. Like Ben-Gvir was brought in here. It's like, who in their right mind think that bringing Ben-Gvir to tour the United States is a good strategy? I really would like to know, just like from pure interest, right? Ben-Gvir, who's in Israel, was actually, found guilty. He is a supporter of Meir Kahane. He's a Kahanist, right? In Israel, he's like, not on the far, far right. He's like below the edge on the right. And they bring him and tour him in the United States. I say, thank you. Because the response to it was massive. I would say that the changes that are taking place, the fact that they have approached this, I would say I know it is a major challenge for us, but I think it's a winnable challenge.
We just want to add hurricane relief in Houston was also.
Hurricane relief.
Hurricane relief in Houston, you had to sign an anti-BDS statement.
Thank you so much for all you've been discussing. I guess I wanted to talk like a bit on the censorship issue and almost in relation to education. I feel like a big part of the censorship is almost an omission of discussion of Middle Eastern studies and of Gaza in general, almost for being too complicated or too sensitive of an area to talk about. And especially at the college levels, a lot of our professors just completely omit the topic in general.
Yeah,
How do you feel like more maybe professors or even like student lecturers should approach the topic and almost like if they were to be more passive on it and just like encourage the communication to even just begin discussion in general?
Yeah. Well, what would I ask you to do is actually take your own education and create centers of counter narrative. I come also from ethnic studies, which is, one of my parts of my appointment at Berkeley is ethnic studies. If you came to US universities in 1963, 64, 65, 66, 67, even 68, there was no such thing as Black studies, Latino studies, Native American studies, Asian American studies, labor studies, or women's studies. All these courses started on the plaza. Students got up, said, our curriculum is not actually speaking to the world that we are seeing in front of our eyes. And they began to actually teach on the plaza and bring in community members to speak about their experience. The first classes in Black studies were on the plaza, Sproul Plaza at UC Berkeley, and then also across the bridge in San Francisco State University. And that began to formulate, right, the centers of knowledge and information that was actually being censored by the canon. We're still trying to be Eurocentric canon still at the university, right? Exceptionalism, right? That's there. So part of it is to do that. And part of it is to actually argue and challenge that the university is not the university if it's not addressing all of the materials and all the information is there. The fact that a donor is calling or somebody feel that they need to be the gatekeeper for Netanyahu, that's not education. That is propaganda masquerading as education, right? I know this because in 2017, one of my students, right, at Berkeley, we had something called DECAL courses, democratic education. This is one of the gains that students had in the 1960s, that if the students see that there is a gap in the curriculum, a student comes, meets with a professor and say, I want to offer a course under your supervision. That was the case. And the student wanted to actually have a course on settler colonialism, a comparative between Palestine and indigenous people. So I said, okay, write up the proposal for the syllabi. We went over it, edited, so on, submitted to the department. We got the signature and scheduled it for the fall semester. On the first day of the classes, the university receives a petition and a letter from a number of Israeli institutions, including Israel Council of Higher Education, a number of other agencies, ADL, and so on, close to 38 different groups in there, including a foreign country, right? The letter is received by the university at 6 a.m. or thereabout. I was out of the campus. It was actually the day of Eid. I get a call from the dean's office. It's a crisis. We need to meet. And so I said, I'm not in the area, but I'll be able to come back around 2 or 3 o'clock. We could meet. By 10 o'clock, or no, by 8:15 or 8:20 a.m., like the letter is received at 6, 8:20 a.m., the dean and the university sends out a statement that the class is canceled, right? So the class is canceled. And then the meeting is called for me to come to the meeting. I come with the chair, and I bring also the students with, so we go to meet with the dean. So the dean says, this is a propaganda course, right? And Israel is not there in the course. It's not there. You cannot teach this. This is a one point of view course and so on. So she just went with the talking points that were handed to her, right, to speak about the course. Now the student who was, I said, you look at the poster, it's right there. Israel is there, right? Literally in the title. Say, well, she just set it aside. I said, well, there's no requirement for a course to have all point of view represented. As long as the scholarship is there, the point of view could be. It's like, if that's a requirement, then I see that in high school, they don't actually provide that you teach Marxism in every class on capitalism. Right? That's not a requirement. The requirement, again, is that you're an expert in your field and you present it. You try to present individuals that might disagree as part of sound scholarship, but this requirement that you have to actually institute this is basically her point of view. I said, the class has been approved by the academic senate and approved by the department. All is clear. The university does not have the right to cancel a class. Right? Canceling a class is the responsibility of the academic senate. If the academic, which is the committee on courses, right? Sometimes they have a funny acronym, but if the committee of courses approved it and the department scheduled, the university responsibility is to make sure that the class is having lights, screen, chairs, and so on. She said, the class is canceled. That's my final say. And so I say, okay, I'll see you. So we left. I called the academic senate. I called the union. And we put out on a petition to get this class to be reinstated. Right? Now, the Committee on Courses and the Academic Senate says that the course has to actually be allowed to go. The only time in the history of UC Berkeley they canceled the course was during the bombing of Cambodia. And as a way, because the campus was disrupted, they terminated or brought into the classes and so on. So there was no authority to do so. Now, the university, knowing that dean and all of their top were caught responding to a foreign government canceling a class, they began to say, well, you need to change the title of the course. I said, I will not do any change as long as the academic senate says it's approved and the department says it's approved. There's not a word is going to be changed. And not only that, their what you call PR person who came from Brown Pizza, nothing against the pizza, but against him, he began to blame the student that did not follow the procedure. So they threw the student under the bus, saying all kinds of things. I said, not only you need to institute the class, but you need to apologize to the student. All right? 3 months thereafter, they had to apologize publicly to the students and put an apology because they were on the wrong. So this is the type of work that needs to go in order for us to push Palestine. And literally, if it's not in the classroom, we need to create the classroom and the narrative in order to educate and put the content. If you looked at the encampments were literally an educational enterprise. I don't know how the university thought that what is taking place is disrupting the academic program. They had libraries. They were actually reading. They were bringing faculty to give lectures and talk and so on. It's only because pressure from outside, and especially from the Ministry of Strategic Affairs in Israel, that this is changing the public opinion of the United States, that you needed to crack down. I'm going to be facetious. I really like to thank Manouche Shafiq from being the president of Colombia.
Please don't.
No, I think I want to be facetious. Right? Literally, she went to the Congress to testify. Right? She threw Joseph Mas'ad under the bus. She threw the students under the bus. She threw the Department of Religion under the bus. Like, if there were cats, she would have thrown them under the bus. Right? So she did well from speaking to the powerful. And she came back to Colombia telling that she had the wind behind her. She has the strength of Congress. Everybody told her, you do whatever, we got your back. Right? Calls the New York Police Department, come and crack heads. Right? Come and drag the students out. Take them out of the building. Do whatever you need. We got the national mandate to do so. Right? In 48 hours, 32 campuses built up encampments. It used to be Colombia, 32. In 1 week, there were 136 campuses, including in the UK, in Italy, in Spain, attempts in France, and so on. So thank you, right? Right, being facetious.
Yeah,
and then she lost her job.
She lost her job, and so Joseph Mas'ad is still
there.
In his position, doing great.
Yeah, again, I hosted him like 3 weeks ago at Berkeley. So literally, she thought that she was doing the right thing for her seat. She doesn't know, once you think that somebody owns your seat, you don't own it. The only thing you have is your ethics and principles. That's going to be with you. But at the end, literally, she's out of a job. And she thought that they are behind her. They'll drop you faster than they drop, a hot potato in that they don't want to handle. And that's basically what happened.
And that's why our silence will never protect us, actually. As
silence never changes history.
yeah. Can I say something? A few announcements, and then we'll take the next question. Number one, what is the sign-up sheet? I need it, please. Who has it? Oh, we found it. Okay, great. Second, we have now drinks, chai latte and coffee and the fresh baklava from Kamaria in the back. So make sure you get some before you leave. And I forgot to thank our amazing technicians, the invisible labor, Finn, Frank, James, and all the others who you can see here today, who actually took care of our tech support. So thank you so much, everyone. Can we give them a round of applause, please? And lastly, faculty from Faculty for Justice in Palestine, students for Justice in Palestine, and the PAM caucus, Palestine Arab and Muslim caucus of our CFA. If you don't mind, if you have time, if you can come for a picture after the event. And now we will take the next question. Yes. Okay, we have to, who was first? I'll take this one and then I'll come to you. Okay. Oh, where? Okay, I'll start here, then go there. Okay. We have 3 questions in the making. This is how you get your steps.
Thank you very much for an ardent defense of freedom of speech. As a veteran of the free speech movement, I suppose I may be the only one here, I suspect. It's unfortunate we're fighting the same battles over again. I have a practical political discussion. When the primary was taking place in Michigan, that could have been a pivotal state and decisive in the election, many Muslim Americans in that state chose to not make a choice, which seemed like a good strategy in the primary to make your voice known that you were unsettled by American policy towards Israel. Yeah. But in the election, if you had to make a choice, it seems to me it's pretty clear, as evidenced even by the current attack on intellectual freedom and political freedom and freedom of speech. What should be the role of the Muslim American community in the 2026 elections?
Yeah. I know most of the people that were engaged both in Michigan, and then I also was in Chicago for the Democratic Convention. Actually, the percentage of Muslims that voted for Republican is smaller than what is being spoken of. I think the Democratic Party also committed another mistake, that after the election, they wanted to blame the Muslims and thus really framing it in an Islamophobic way. Between what Biden got and what Harris got is about 15 million votes, right? If we looked at Michigan, all of those who ran on the Democratic ticket as Arab and Muslims won their elections. The voices that Trump was able to acquire are a section of the Yemeni community. And that section of the Yemeni community was mobilized for other issues relative to LGBTQ issues and the curriculum. And that was being undertaken by the Republican for quite some time. My reading of Michigan is literally Kamala Harris lost the vote for the wrong strategy in Michigan, right? During the primary in Michigan, Kamala Harris decided to bring Liz Cheney, right, and go and campaign on abortion rights. While the issue in Michigan that people were mobilizing was to speak about economic issues, but also to speak about the Gaza genocide, especially if you're going to campaign in Dearborn, in parts of Detroit, and so on, in order that. Trump, say whatever, I think he is one of the most skilled salespersons you could ever have. As Kamala completely rebuffed the community, she did not actually show up in any space where the Muslim and Arab community gather. She decided to go to the suburbs in her strategy with Liz Cheney. That did a number of things. One, the suburbs are not going to abandon Trump. So she was going, literally climbing the wrong tree. The second, even if you wanted to get people from the suburb, Liz Cheney is the wrong messenger for that, because her father is Dick Cheney, is completely identified with the invasion of Iraq, being Darth Vader, recognized in Washington. So even if you wanted to peel some of the white votes in the suburbs, Liz Cheney is the wrong person. Maybe some of the circles around her that maybe can move the needle by 2 votes, but not by 20,000. Trump, on the other hand, he lies like 20 times before he opens his mouth. So he actually went to the Arab communities. He went to an Arab restaurant. He ordered from a Lebanese restaurant. He enjoyed their cuisine, went and what you call hugged people, right? In essence, he did a good retail campaign that projected on the news in a way that most people decided not to turn out for the election. And then I would say his service at the McDonald's window is a masterful stroke. While Kamala went out with Liz Cheney and they had this big concert with Beyonce, he was doing the retail in a way, positioning himself as a working class. And anyone that sees the visuals and the campaign, it just was effective. So in 2026, I do think that the Muslim community will still vote predominantly Democratic in terms of its position. In districts where it's a toss-up between Democrat and Republican, I think they will come more heavily toward the Democrats. In California, I think people are going to vote all kinds of ways because it's already deep Democrats, 65% and above. So I don't think it will matter. But in those areas where there is at least a ticket, competitive ticket, I think the Muslim community, the Arab community will vote on the Democratic side for those seats. And that's what we are expecting at least to see in the 2026 election, unless something drastically changed, which I don't see it happening in the immediate future. The other part is that also we need to account that there was a percentage change in black votes turning for Trump, which is far more sizable than the Muslim vote. Also, the Latino men migrated in large numbers to Trump. But the language is that the Muslims are the one that lost the election for the Democrats is one that resonates with the Muslim Inc. type of message. And I think that's where we need to make sure that look at the data in a very clear way. 15 million votes did not come out.
There was a question over here that, oh, yes.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question kind of goes back to how we were talking about Monday. There was supposed to be a vote to expand that bill to prevent, boycotts of Israel. So we got voices like you mentioned, MTG, Charlie Kirk, basically pushing back against this. And in my opinion, they just want to be straight up like anti-Semitic. And that is the weapon that they're using as justifications to kind of squash down the movement, this and that. And I did mention in Dr. Yagubian's class how I'm starting to see a lot more of the people that I don't associate with, the Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA camp, slowly coming towards our side of things, but for totally wrong reasons. So my question is like, if we could have some practical advice to protect ourselves from people that are coming into our spaces for the wrong reasons, so we can prevent those labels of anti-Semitism from being directed towards us, so that we may continue the fight.
Yeah, well, just like 3 weeks ago, we held a conference among a number of Holocaust scholars, scholars of genocide, and Palestinian scholars, Arab and Muslim scholars in Granada, Spain, to come up with a joint declaration on Islamophobia and anti-Semitism that does not use the IRA or the weaponization of anti-Semitism that we are seeing. Because sometimes it's very difficult for people to challenge and be able to recognize anti-Semitism, while at the same time also how to defend Palestine and not fall into anti-Semitism. Let's just be very clear. The Western world is deeply, deeply, deeply anti-Semitic and deeply, deeply, deeply Islamophobic. and deeply, deeply racist toward anything that is not white and push white supremacy. Okay? The Western world always works with excluding the other or expelling the other, right? We went to Grenada for a specific reason, because the expulsion in 1492, the Inquisition, right? The purity of blood, which is being right now used all across Europe as the rising tide of right wing. And there's across the Atlantic, right, relationship between America's right wing and European right wing. The fact that we're seeing neo-Nazi parties winning elections tells us that we're dealing with a phenomenon. On the one hand, weaponizing anti-Semitism to target activists and those who are critiquing the system, and simultaneously trying to posit themselves that they're the rescuers of Western civilization. So you're seeing this in America, like some of the most anti-Semitic individuals flip the side, say they are defending Israel, and they are using their voice to do so. They're making what you call instrumentalization of anti-Semitism in order to push themselves forward. I hope that you read the bill, right? One item in the bill, and I literally want you to go and read the bill, one item that is not anti-Semitic, guess which one? It says, if somebody says the Jews killed Jesus, is not a statement that is anti-Semitic. Huh? That's like, this is basically the evangelicals, the supremacists and so on, that still want to reproduce, right, the historical theological perspective and insisting, saying free Palestine is anti-Semitic. Opposing AIPAC is anti-Semitic. Opposing somebody that is actually working or pointed that somebody is working for AIPAC is anti-Semitic. But saying Jews as the Jews killed Jesus is not anti-Semitic. It's like, whoa, you need to pull your hairs. And the fact that somebody writes this and actually put it in a congressional resolution and they think this is a defense of anti-Semitism is beyond what you call illogical, beyond comprehension. But that's where we are. So you have to literally make sure that you engage in this way, a defense of the Jewish community and a defense of countering anti-Semitism, just as a defense of freedom for Palestinians and a defense of Islamophobia, and making sure that Islamophobia is not right, and making sure that is the message that we need to go out with as a principle, not as a utilitarian function. Right? And again, for me, I challenge anyone to, you know, the post-World War II, they talk about Judeo-Christian tradition. I say, where? Like, literally, tell me, where is Judeo-Christian tradition was present? Like 1492? Was there a Judeo-Christian tradition? Was there a Judeo-Christian tradition during the Crusades? Was there a Judeo-Christian tradition during the plague? You know, every time that there was something happening in Europe, bring the Jews. They're the reason they're being, God is angry with us. So slaughter the Jewish community, right? All the way up to World War II, right? So after World War II, we do rebranding. I would argue that there is Islamic Judaic tradition, much more robust, much more historically vibrant, much more present, that covers almost 1400 years. Right? Just think about, up to the modern period, you could not be a specialist in Judaic or Jewish history and text without actually studying Arabic because of Judeo-Arabic, what you call commentary. Right? That's the reality. That's the history. So we need to make sure that we don't, not every alliance you need to take. Right? Some alliances say, thank you, but thank you. I'll have my shawarma.
Thank you, everyone. Such wonderful questions. We have time for one more. Did you? Yes, excellent.
Thank you. My name is Jocelyn. I had a question. I appreciate your quote on the screen for neutrality is a myth that serves the powerful. In conversations about dissent on campus, as we know, protests are one of the most accessible and visible aspects of or like physical manifestation is the easiest and most accessible way for students to speak out and use their free speech. Yeah. In conversations about dissent on campus, it it has moved to an area of saying of neutrality, where it's like about safety, about you know, respecting other people, and saying, you know, trying to limit how students come out and protest. And I appreciate, again, your example of Berkeley, as this campus is has been disengaged in terms of how students are able to come out and protest and their voice on campus. So I'd like to hear about your perspective of how we can take back that conversation about neutrality, and, you know, in the face of hearing all of these policies that come up in student unions and, you know, spaces where students should be able to voice their opinions more freely, that how can we, I guess, educate also the people in charge of those policies that neutrality is perhaps hindering us more than it is helping us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me first give a little bit background on this notion of campus climate and campus safety. These are new constructions. The constructions begin around 2011, 2012, specifically around Palestine protest on the UC system. As a result of a takeover of protest takeover of a building, the ADL, JCRC, Zionist Organization of America, Ilal complained that the campus climate is hostile to Jewish students. So, and here conflating critique and protest of Israel, Zionism, freedom of Palestinians to be transformed into campus safety and concern for the Jewish students. So the university created a task force, self-appointed individuals. They send them out to go to the UC system to have interviews and collect testimonies. Then they ran a shoddy survey. Like McDonald's does a better service than what the university, literally shoddy survey. They sent it out. They took this data, they put out a report on campus climate, and from those recommendations began to create this campus climate, and with it principles of community and so on, all with being situated on protecting and extending protection to the Zionist students' ability to defend Israel whenever a Palestinian or pro-Palestine expression takes place on campus. This then gets to be weaponized in the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as such becomes literally, that's why I say it's exclusion, because in general, it says that if a Palestinian or a Muslim student or Arab students organize something for Palestine, you're disrupting the campus climate. And a number of our students feel threatened by this expression. What happened in here is that the university in climate and campus safety and climate, they have a different set of policies, because now you're dealing with safety and well-being, versus the code on free speech, which is time, place, and manner, and had free speech, constitutional rights, academic freedom. So the university literally managed to rewire the internal dynamics of the university to shift public speaking on Palestine to be an issue of campus safety and campus climate. So I rejected this, this approach, said that this is literally weaponizing the campus towards censoring the Palestinians on voices. More importantly, it actually elevated the concerns of the Zionist student at the expense of everyone else. I would say the following: the primary victims of racism on campus and harassment are black students, without exception. Yet, you will not see this in any debate or any discussion, and it's always after the thought. So we need to actually rethink and challenge how the university creates these mechanisms and creates the epistemological structure that leads to silencing people and systematically doing so. Lastly, for Arabs and Muslims, they also are being invited into what you call an ecumenical deal on campus. So you'll find the chancellor, the president, or so, or bring the Muslim student. I'm going to say, again, they're not threatening. They bring them during Ramadan. Say, we're going to try to give you a halal service line in the cafeteria, right? And we need to engage with you and so on. So the engagement becomes set up that you don't need to rock the boat. So don't go to these protests and so on, because it's just like really not conducive there. Or we know that you need a place to do wudu, right? We need to we could help you in that, but at the expense. And then lastly, try to have interfaith gathering so we'll understand each other. So the university here is acting as a part of the State Department, like bringing delegations from the Muslim students, Arab students, Palestinian students to forge a concept of peaceful coexistence in the middle of a genocide. So I say there is no halal line in the middle of a genocide. The university should provide a halal line, not because it's to try to buy the silencing of a group, it's because of service to 2,000 students. And if the students need this, in the same way that you provide a stadium and a lunch spread for the gladiators called football players, you need to provide that same service to anyone, right? So again, to refuse to be brought into this instrumentalization that takes place in order to buy people's silence. So the university is very skilled, because again, they bring in some of the students. The students don't know what's taking place in there. They don't know that there is an endowment that has been put in there to try to bring the Muslim and Zionist students together, because again, this is what the university, and I always tell the chancellor and anyone, you are not a desk in the State Department. Nobody appointed you to be in the UN. If you make it to the UN, we'll try to meet with you if we want, but this is not your role on campus. All right? The university administrators, because they have an endowment and somebody is calling them, they feel that they have to act as being a front desk in the State Department and bringing what you call a peace conference on campus. No other group on campus is asked to sit with groups that oppose its point of view, except when it comes to Muslim Arabs and Palestinians. No one. I'm in ethnic studies. I never heard black students being asked to sit with a white KKK and tell them we need to forge together. All right? We need to have a dialogue among you, right? There is not, and again, this is managed by exception. It's so racist, it's just beyond, right? Now, we got also introduced, there was an email from the university that managing relations with the Muslims said, I don't care about the Muslim student, don't let them ask me again, literally like so Islamophobic, while actually still meeting and saying, we want to help you and so on. So literally, double face is like, it's a nice term. It's not even double first, literally Islamophobic, right there in your hand.
Thank you, everyone, for your presence. Thank you, Dr. Bazian.
Thank you.
Yes, this officially concludes the 2025 Not Edward Said Endowed Lecture. Thank you all for your presence. And please enjoy some snacks and coffee at the back. And we're not running out, so it'd be nice to speak to some of you back there.
Thank you.
Say well, he's the most dangerous guy.
Too much information. Thank you. Your question.
One of my students from my class and the top one.
Yes.
So the students at CSU, particularly San Bernardino, are notified by administrators that when we speak out on genocide, the genocide is not about demonstrations for actively propagating